Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Our first story is kind of heartbreaking. OP has the character and ambition to be much more, perhaps even run her own restaurant if she chose. Instead, she kept the place running when it clearly needed to be closed down and something better built on its place. There will always be evil people in places of power, but they don't have to stay there. It just takes the courage to say no. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. You suspended me for 7 days, not 6. So for context, this happened back in 2015, 2016. I'm a single mom, 23-year-old female at the time, and only had a young son to tend to. So I was waitressing at a restaurant that I'll call East End for this story that was in the heart of the rough area of our town, but a major success due to the support of our community and area-wide parties we were known for throwing. It even resulted in another restaurant being built on the West Coast. However, behind the scenes, our best-known secret was that our checks would never clear, and cashing them anywhere was always an issue due to mismanagement of funds. They even put $0 on my W-2 form, even though I put back funds from each supposed check, which I think is illegal. Throughout this, I stayed faithful to them and worked hard almost every day, bringing my son with me from lack of childcare. I even worked an entire month from 9 a.m. to sometimes 3 a.m. I was eventually made top waitress and got a $1.25 an hour raise, which wasn't much on waitress pay, but still every penny counted. But soon the owner passed the company down to his son, and when his son took over, everything was okay until he hired 2 employees. I'll call them Tina, an older female, and Leah, an old schoolmate. So over time, I noticed that my boss's son started getting closer to them, to a point where they were hanging out after work. Then one day, a meeting occurred to where they both named managers, even though I had 2 years of seniority in top sales, and my job title and pay raise were both taken. As if that was not heartbreaking enough, my work ethic started getting picked apart by them, especially Tina, who would call me a table hog and not a team player, even though I brought in the most sales. So finally, the last straw came on an event night. I'd worked the entire lunch rush that day and was asked to cover the late shift since they knew I knew how to work it. Tina decided to make me the register waitress, meaning I could only work the front bar and door and not take tables. "You made enough money for today," she said with a snark and walked off. Now, my family happened to walk in and requested for me to host their table. There was a rule saying that if a certain worker was requested, that worker would take it. But my manager was upset by this because she had to work front in my place. By the end of the night, she pulled up the computer and the following conversation happens. "Tina, what did you do for this table?" Me, confused and angry. "Who is questioning my orders?" Tina, taken aback. "I was wanting to see what you did for them, worth being suspended for a week." I had no choice but to work when, as a manager, I'm supposed to just sit back and observe everything to make sure things go right. Me, "Excuse me? You know the rule. But you know what? Whatever. F this." I stormed out in tears. The next day, I go in for my check when I notice on the schedule that I was only suspended for 6 days and scheduled to work on the 7th day for a huge part that was supposed to happen. I went directly to the boss and told him I thought I was suspended for 7 days, not 6, and had plans for that day, which I didn't. My boss saw this and pointed it out to Tina, who had no choice but to enforce my suspension. That night, I drove by and the streets were packed. I blew the horn and waved. The staff told me that due to poor planning of suspension of her best server and being short-staffed, she struggled to find coverage and was yelled at by the boss for her poor leadership, and she had to work it herself. I found a job that week and quit and told them that my 2 weeks' notice was when they would notice I wasn't coming back. It makes me a little sick to hear people are treated this way. Good for you taking another job, OP. And our second story. Strictly stick to the work hours and top an hour extra? You have it, boss. This happened just before I quit my last job, some 4 years ago. I was working with the largest IT company in my country. It's known for being employee-friendly with very relaxed working hours and good perks and emoluments. However, the delivery head of our project, our boss, had a totally different outlook. Officially, we were supposed to work from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., but nobody stressed about it because clocking in a total of 45 hours a week was the only compliance required. Personally, I like to work till late, less traffic while returning, so I'd work to 10 to 10:30. The client never used to bother us before 11. Not very disciplinary on my part, I know, but that was the general trend in that company. This boss guy suddenly decides to become draconian about the punctuality in office hours. Everyone's expected at their workstations by 9. Nonetheless, all of us complied, saying, if 45 hours is the only rule, so be it. Now, since in my team I was the last person to leave every day, I had voluntarily taken up a few extra technical responsibilities that needed to be addressed only after everyone signed off and after the client was done for the day, which was never before 8. As you can guess, it immediately became chaotic when I began reaching at 9 and leaving at 6 every day. Needless to say, the boss was helplessly out of his wits and had to stay back himself most of the nights for a week to wrap up the closing tasks. Yes, he always used to leave by 6 before this. He was neither much acquainted with the SOPs, nor could he gather aid from any of his staff, so he really found himself in a mess. They could have simply reinstated our work hours. Instead, this is what they do one fine evening. Boss, why are you leaving now? Me, I'm done for the day. It's 6:30 already. Boss, who will do the technical responsibilities? Me, but then I'd have to stay for another 2 hours. Boss, okay, let's see. During the last 1 month, you've come to work after 10 every day. That's 20 to 22 hours of deficiency. I couldn't decide if I should laugh or be infuriated at this nonsensical statement. Me, but I've worked till 8:30 p.m. every day. So not only that's incorrect, but I've actually worked 20 to 22 hours more, for which I should claim overtime payment. Boss, then why didn't you? Dismissing. Anyway, that's a separate topic altogether. From tomorrow, you're either coming in an hour early or staying an hour late for a whole month to compensate for your deficiency. At that time, I was preparing for another high-paying job in the government sector that requires an immensely tough competitive exam to be cleared, for which I needed to put in a lot of effort and time into studying and researching. The exams were due in a month, and I was struggling with the latter as I used to return late. So I saw this as the optimal opportunity, kill two birds with a stone situation. I decided to comply. Well, I began to clock in at 8 every day, study and research vigorously for an hour without any disturbance, using the company's internet, printer, stationaries, and whatever other utilities required, and managed to be ready for my work by 9. For a whole month, I fueled my exam preparation from the company's resources, and yes, I claimed full overtime payment too. To be honest, a lot of times I used to feel guilty about this, but the pleasure I got from submitting my resignation letter after I got the job I was preparing for was a wholesome, out-of-the-world feeling. Edit. This post is about a company based in India. I think the one rule all IT managers should remember is your skilled employees will always be able to find work elsewhere, and many of them are always looking, even passively, so at least treat them nicely and let them do their work. And our last story. The new fence. Recalling this story made my heart smile. A few years ago, I was building a new fence for a friend of mine. I had to remove the old sections that were falling apart. First, of course, and when I got to the intersection of his back fence, his side fence, and the next door neighbor's back fence, I carefully separated the neighbor's fence from his and proceeded to carry on removing the side sections that went between their two properties. My friend had told me that the side section was 100% on his property and that the previous owner, 30 plus years ago, had deliberately given the next door neighbor's property an extra foot or so to ensure that he was building on his own property without calling for and paying for a survey. The neighbor Susan, whom I'll refer to as Karen for the remainder of this story, came running outside screaming at me that I couldn't remove the side fence and it was their property and just what do I think I'm doing? I responded back very calmly that my friend had told them well in advance that he was going to replace the fence, that he was just going to build it in the same place as the old one, and asked if they were willing to split the costs, to which they declined. No biggie. Karen started screaming at me again, telling me I had no right to do that, and that my friend didn't give them proper notice, and that she didn't realize that there wouldn't be anything between their two properties to contain their dog. By now, I'm about ready to lose my crap, so I knocked on my friend's back door to let him know what was going on, and that he needed to talk to Karen and that I was leaving because I didn't want to do or say anything I'd regret or cause problems with the neighbors for my friend. The entire project got put on hold pending a property survey that was going to cost $650 and that they demanded my friend pay half of, despite him telling them that the fence was definitely on his property and nothing was going to change with the new fence, and that he was fine with them continuing to have a foot or so of his property so that he didn't have to rock the boat. Fast forward to the following Monday when the surveyor comes out. Turns out the old side fence was not a little on my friend's property, but almost 10 feet onto his property. And the neighbors had built up raised flower beds and done a nice brick retaining wall right up along the fence line that they'd spent a lot of money just in materials for. Never mind the time they put in constructing it. Needless to say, my friend came away with the biggest crap-eating grin. For the mere price of $325, he was entitled to expand his yard of more than 30 years by about 800 square feet. And Karen and her husband, who happened to be the polar opposite of his wife in personality and was super nice, spent the next week moving their garden, retaining wall, and all the dirt that was on my friend's property so that I could build the fence on his side of the actual property line. They then hired the cheapest contractors they could find to slap up a fence on their side of the property line. They spent almost as much as my friend did on their new fence. I gave my friend the friends and family discount 3 years later, and the last 20 feet or so of their fence is on the ground already because it was such a crappy job that it fell over in a moderate windstorm this past spring. My friend's fence is still standing, rock solid, and his dogs are definitely making good use of the extra 800 square feet. Now the husband has ammo for his future, "Shut up, Karen," or need I remind you of what happened the last time you opened your damn ignorant mouth? Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.